Hello, welcome to TubbyTalks, the first episode. Today we're here with David Boland, who is me and Joseph's old PE teacher. Old as in used to be, not he's old. And we're going to just talk to him today about, a bit about sports in Scotland and the sort of experiences we've had. So, hi David. You want to just maybe talk a bit about your background in sport and we can go from there?
Yeah, sure. Listen, thanks for having me on. I actually feel very privileged to be the first
Yeah.
invited on to the first episode, so thank you. No, obviously, I've been a PE teacher for, I think it's 18 years now. So I've been teaching PE, obviously now do guidance, and I've got, I think maybe 15 years I've been coaching football for, so I've had involvement in sort of elite football with regards to coaching, and played. My sport was always football.
Yeah.
That's what I was really interested in, playing football. But probably latterly in the last 10 years get really involved in bodybuilding, physique, and then competing in bodybuilding shows. And I think, just to summarise, overall my thing's just about, I just love coaching people really, so it's about getting the best out of people, having people reach their potential, recognise their capabilities. So that I think that's what I'm about really.
Yeah, we are all actually coaches of some kind at some point in our life. But obviously, I'm now just became a PE teacher, so it's kind of weird to now be one. Just recently, but you mentioned bodybuilding, obviously, and you've done that. Have you not? You've competed at the British for the drug-free bodybuilding, haven't you?
Yeah, so I've competed twice in bodybuilding, and both where there's two main federations in bodybuilding. So there's the BNBF and there's the UK DFBA.
Yeah.
There's not really much difference between them. They maybe just bias certain things in terms of what they're looking for. You know, one maybe leans towards competitors who are a wee bit more conditioned, a wee bit leaner, and another maybe is looking for a bit more size. So there's a wee bit of a difference in terms of what they're looking for when they're actually judging you, but they're both drug-free,
Yeah.
or they're tested. So if you place in a show, you would be tested just to make sure that you're obviously not using any kind of performance enhancing drugs.
Okay.
So yeah, I've competed twice, 2018 and 2020, incidentally, was my last show.
Right.
Yeah, which was
say you've,
interesting.
You say you've competed, but did you not do pretty well in some of those competitions?
I did. Well, 2018 I didn't place,
Right.
and that was what they tend to do with bodybuilding is they would have regional shows. So you would go to like a Scottish competition or a Northern Counties competition or whatever it may be, and they would then take the best competitors and they would then go forward for the British finals at the end of the year. That's kind of how it works. And so in 2018 I went to a Scottish Championships and I didn't place. I was in with, I think it was maybe 8 or 9 people in my class,
Right.
and I didn't place, which is hugely disappointing because you would have to prep for about 6 or 7 months.
Yeah, it's a lot of work, isn't it? Bodybuilding.
Yeah. So to prep for 7 months and then not place, to be on the stage for all of 2 minutes is disappointing. But there are other things that you take away from these things other than just getting on stage.
Was that your first comp as well?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was my first competition.
So your first competition, it's never, you've got nothing to prove in your first competition. So not placing it is disappointing, but I think most people probably don't place in their first competition in most sports. Although obviously there are a few nutters out there that are just amazing at the get go compared to everybody else. But
Except if you of course, in your first
well,
competition.
sumo wrestling, yeah, obviously that was
So you're not
never
really
mind.
speaking from experience here, are you, really?
No. Well, strongman, the first strongman comp I did, and Joseph probably the same, got absolutely battered. I wasn't last, but I think I was second from last, and there was about maybe 10, 11 people. Then the second strongman comp I ever did was, again, maybe 15 people. I was like 10th. It wasn't until like my 4th or 5th comp that I got into the top 5 for strongman, and then I've just got third at the UK's drug-free strongest junior, and that was the first ever drug-free comp I've ever done. So I don't know if there's maybe a wee trend there with the non-tested ones, but it was still really good, and that took me ages to get up to. And strongman's kind of similar in the sense of it's not quite seven odd months of prep, but you do need to prep for about maybe 3-4. And so when you do all of that and you train for hours a day in that, and then you go and you don't place very highly, you do feel a bit disappointed in yourself. But looking back at it now, if I looked at every comp I did, every single comp I placed higher until eventually I got the third. So, it does eventually get you up. Sumo wrestling, obviously, that's totally different, I guess, with this case. Me and Joseph both did it, and we went there. I don't want to sound bad, especially to any of the sumos that are maybe listening, but we did go there, pretty much beat everybody that wasn't all, beat everybody that was also quite new. Then we did a wee mini novice comp, and then I podiumed at it, well, I won it. And then me and Joseph, about 4 months later, went down to the British Sumo Wrestling Championships.
Not even 4.
It wasn't, it was like 2 months later, yeah. And Team Scotland came away with like 22 of the medals and awards out of a possible like 34, and then England had a couple, and I think I had 3 gold medals and a bronze. There's categories of like open, heavyweight, junior, that kind of thing. Joseph got a gold and a bronze, and
weight categories, and there's
yeah,
also you also won the best newcomer award as well.
and the best, yeah.
Fair, so that was
With but that is like it is quite rare, obviously, to go. I think we're lucky in the timing we joined sumo, and that strongman was our background. So if we hadn't have done that for a couple of years beforehand, there's no way we would have went into the sumo and been as good. Because plus, I did judo for like 15 years.
You come from a judo and
Yeah.
strongman background.
Yeah, well, I would say that probably I can only imagine that competing is about there's a mindset with competing, and like it's not just about your average performance. Competing, to be able to do your very best on the day, there's almost like a kind of psychology and a tactic to competing, and once you crack the code, it's like you start to do better. So I would imagine in your strongman events that after having learned from your first event, you would then have started to realise, hold on a minute, like there's other people who are maybe not as strong as me, but they have a way of doing this that really works. And once you start to get that code, that's when you start to really compound that skill set that you have and all those things that you learn, which results in being so much better. And then having gone into, you've actually taken your ability to compete in strongman, and you've taken that code and you've been able to then apply it with that experience into your sumo, like you've said. So you've not really gone into it raw.
No, we've not gone into it totally. No sumo experience or wrestling, I suppose, but grappling. But yeah, there was a lot of background that helped us. And I genuinely think that strongman, I've always kind of said this, can translate to almost any sport in the world, just with the physicality and all that and the sort of dynamics, yes, but just the kind of mental game of strongman. You can kind of go into any sport after doing strongman and not be scared about not being good at it, if you know what I mean. Especially because I'd quite like to hear if it's the same with bodybuilding, but strongman, no matter where you go, every single sport or every single competition or whatever you're doing, any random gym you go to, if there's people doing strongman there, they will automatically come over and help you do something. If somebody beats you in an event in a strongman comp, they'll immediately come over and tell you, oh, you should maybe do this next time. Yeah. Even if you want to say that when they're
well, whenever I've been in a competition or whenever I've seen my friends, quite often I'll be watching them, supporting them from the side. But even not just your friends or your supporters, your competitors, the people you're supposed to be against, they'll rush over to you, whether they've failed their lift or just completed their lift. They'll try and shout in your face to encourage you to complete your lift. And it does seem a little bit like you wouldn't really see that in certain sports. You wouldn't really see, Lewis Hamilton run over to Max Verstappen and say, come on, you need to finish this race. They've got a bit more of a sort of personal mentality where they want to win, they want to beat everyone else. Of course, in strongman, you want to win and beat everyone else, but at the same time, there's never really going to be, especially in amateur strongman, there's never really going to be that mentality where you don't want to support your fellow, competitors. There's always that camaraderie, and it would be interesting to hear more about bodybuilding, especially competitively, if you think there's a similar mentality in that, or if it is very different where it's kind of focus on yourself? Because I'm not really sure how that would be. The
Yeah, well,
differences, you know.
I would probably second what you've just said there. Obviously, I have very limited experience as strongman, except for the competition that I was invited to. When you asked me to
the
come
TubbyFit
and,
Classic.
yeah, it was a fantastic event, and I'm not into strongman. It's not my thing, but I really can appreciate how physically and mentally demanding it is. And what I was really impressed with was just that. It was the fact that people wanted each other to do well. And I think it was, I can't remember, I'm not sure if it was you that had said that, Chris, on the day. It was about you actually want your competitors to do the very, very best that you can, that they can, sorry, because you want to, if you're going to win,
Yeah.
you want to beat them at their best.
Yeah.
It's not just about you getting the gold, it's about you getting the gold. And, you know,
Despite them
Being
at their
abreast,
top
you don't want, yeah,
game,
you don't want to win it because somebody else just happened to have an off day.
Yeah, or made a mistake or got injured or anything. You hear the top guys all the time saying, like, if they win a competition because somebody was injured, they'll go, I'm not really happy because I didn't get to beat him at his best. In fact, the World Log Lift Championships between Luke Stoltman and I can't remember the other guy at the time, it was Graham Hicks, they actually decided to not do it because Iron Bibby, who was another amazing log lifter, couldn't be there. And so they went, we're not going to do it. And then they did it a few months later with Iron Bibby, and Iron Bibby ended up winning it. So, you know, it's a very weird thing of you don't want to beat somebody who isn't doing their best because, like you said, you want to beat the best to be the best kind of thing. You want to prove to yourself that you actually did deserve the win. Exactly how you were saying.
Again, you know, you're asking me about bodybuilding, is it the same? I'd say where the similarities lie is in that, like if I take you to my first show 2018, I don't know why, I probably had it in my head that, well, I had no expectations really because I didn't know what to expect as my first show, but
yeah,
I didn't really want to go out there and do it if I wasn't going to do well. But my coach kept saying to me that you don't know who's going to compete in your class. Like, it's not as if it's professional where you know, like, so for example, if it's the Mr. Olympia, you know the top 3-4 guys that are going to be on that stage. You know what they're all going to bring.
Yeah.
So you've got an idea in your head, comparing to what it was last year, what you're going to need to do to show up at your best. In this amateur sport, you don't even know the guys who are going to be on the stage. You don't even know how many guys are going to be there.
Yeah.
There are guys who have went on stage prep for 6 months, only to find out that there's only one person taking the stage. They're the only person taking the stage. You just don't know. You could be there with 8 other guys who are absolutely top of their game. They've got unbelievable physiques. You could be there with guys that don't have great physiques at all.
Yeah.
Do you know? So the only thing you can do is your very best. You need to focus on you, compare yourself to you, and bring the very, very best you that you possibly can. And sometimes that means that you win, and sometimes it means that you don't. But I think it's a very dangerous game in bodybuilding when you start comparing your physique to other people. You really need to have that thing where you block it out and just do the very best you can, because I would probably take you to the hardest bit in bodybuilding is the bit where you're about to go out on stage and you know people take their shirts off, so they're there just in their trunks, and then you see everybody else's physique and you look at the guy beside you and you go, oh man, like, I'm nowhere close to that. Do you know what I mean? Like, broad shoulders, narrow waist, and you're like, I cannot beat that. But you need to put that to the back of your mind and just block it out, you know? Because it's very easy to go into a competition knowing you're the best.
Yeah.
That's dead easy.
Well, there's actually a wee bit of an issue, not so much these days, but there's a lot of glory hunters in strongman. The rule is, if you win a novice comp, you're not supposed to do another novice comp. But the thing that a lot of guys, novice comp for strongman is extremely varied. It could mean like 70 kilo log or 100 kilo log. Like, you know, there's a massive variety of it. So a lot of guys end up winning like 5 or 6 novice comps, and they just keep going to more novice comps because they know they're going to win it easily, and they're not quite ready to win an inters yet, so they don't want to go up and do it. And so it kind of happens. There's actually and bear with me with this, because I don't want to make this sound like I'm undermining bodybuilding, but there's a very slight similar experience me and Joseph had at a beard championship, where we obviously have got beards, and exactly how you were describing, we walked in, and I was in the ginger beard category, and Joseph was in the short beard category. His beard was a bit shorter than it is now, obviously. And we walked in, looking at everybody. I was, in fact, at first I was even worried I was ginger enough, and the guy held.
I went for his birthday.
Yeah.
And there was different categories: over 8-inch natural, under 4-inch styled, etc. Right? For him, I bought him the ginger beard category, which was open to anything. You just had to be ginger enough, and they used a can of iron brew to make sure that it was
To look at, make sure it
And
was
he passed the test
Yeah.
because it was ginger enough.
Brilliant.
It's not the brightest, but it was still ginger
It was
enough.
there.
And so he went in obviously blind as to who would be up against. But we walked in and there was guys from all over the world, USA, Scandinavia, Europe, and they all come like every year for this kind of thing. They take it really seriously. Some of them were unbelievable, the beards that you've seen. But with your ginger category, it was actually one of the toughest categories there. Like there was loads of people. Some of them entered more than one category because they had a ginger 8-inch beard.
Which
you know.
What are
wasn't- they
what are
weren't meant
judging
to.
this on?
Well, that was the thing. That's
What is
what
the criteria?
I was
with
gonna
the
say-
beard championships?
There was a few different
the
ones.
weird thing about it was I was told that the ginger beard category was like easy because not a lot of people go in it. It actually turned out to be the toughest because there was about 14 guys in it, and like you were just saying, as soon as I found that out and I saw guys with beards down to here and mine was similar, I was like, oh, there you go, absolutely no chance then, eh? There's no point in me doing this. And then what you had to do, kind of similar to bodybuilding, was go on stage and like pose with your feet, with your face though,
Right.
so they could see it.
Also
And then
feel
a judge would
They
come
judged
over
how
and
soft
feel
it
it
was
to feel how
Right,
soft
okay.
it was.
how it compared to your overall attire.
Yeah,
and
your,
style.
the whole style. So if you came with a big ginger beard and you were wearing like something that
tracksuit.
they didn't say would suit it.
So you had to coordinate the colour of the beard with the colour of the clothes.
Yeah,
it had
kinda.
to tie in.
Some people had a style like a steampunk sort of Victorian style with a monocle and a whole outfit and a suit. Some people had like a Grim Reaper outfit and a scythe. There was a whole bunch of different styles there.
Wow.
So, but some of them just went for like a hipster look or.
I mean,
a style in general.
obviously, there's nowhere near the prep that goes into that than bodybuilding.
Oh yeah. But,
You put a bit
Oh,
of,
you might be surprised. Who knows?
you put
Some
some,
of them, some
you,
of them
yeah,
definitely put in a bit of preparation.
you put some oils and things in, but
They prepped for about 10 years, bro.
exactly. That was funny though, that it was a semi-similar experience there of like seeing somebody who's got like, in your head better, but also a similar experience in that Joe ended up going and being the only guy in his category, so he won.
Yeah, so
Even though he was looking around the
Yeah.
room going, oh, all these beards are amazing, I have no chance, and then, oh, you're the only one, so
yeah, so
you
I
win.
thought-
Yeah.
So as you said, you could be the only guy in your category, and there's no point having that build up of fear or anything.
Yep.
Maybe it can encourage some people, but at the same time, you never know.
But again, if all you do is compare yourself, then you would lose sight of all the things, all the hard work that you've done
Yeah,
to get there. But also, if I think, if you come first in that situation where you're not competing against anybody else, again, if you compare yourself to the fact that you've not competed against anyone, you kind of undermine the process that you've went through.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because actually it's the process that you go through that creates the person you become, if that makes sense.
yeah.
Do you know, there's so much more to be gained from competing and from preparing than just a medal. The medal gets handed out in the day, but it's what you live with thereafter. The lessons that you take from it are invaluable. I say it seems a wee bit deep. I mean, I'd love a medal, but that is true. That is true.
No, I agree. Obviously, I can only relate that to things I've done. So I have done strongman, and with me and all my friends that do strongman, it's about the personal goals and achievements and the personal things you've achieved. Whether that's a new personal best for a lift, or achieving a physique that you'd want, or getting lighter whilst maintaining strength. Whatever your goal is, it's a lot to do with that. It's not just whether you could come 8th out of 8 people. It doesn't matter if you've achieved 3 PBs on that competition day, because that's still a big achievement for you. And if you look at that and focus on your own goals, obviously you say you'd love a medal, and it's always great to have a trophy or a medal. I don't have too many of them, but the ones I did achieve in my life for various things, it's always a great feeling. But if you know you've achieved your own personal goals and you've done the best you can possibly do and focus on that and make sure you do the best every time, then it is the main thing, I would say, for most sports in general.
Yeah,
Basketball as well, obviously, we used to do as well. So
yeah, I mean, that's what people have to consider, is that everybody's got their own personal situation that they're in when they're competing for something. It's never an even playing field. Never.
Yeah.
Obviously, to a point, it has to be. But everybody's got their own personal circumstances, their own personal journey, their own pitfalls, setbacks, challenges. Like, you could be competing against someone you have absolutely no idea what they've just been through the night before. Maybe they've been sick the night before, and to even just show up and compete, it's just a massive win. You know, so the bar is always changing, and I think it's what I stand for is always just about being the very best that you can be. That's what I'm always about, you know. And to take you to 2020, it's a wee bit of an embarrassing story, like Eddie the Eagle, because you were asking about my British medal.
Yeah.
So 2020, I competed for the second time. Now that was during lockdown, so I did a 3-month prep. So obviously you're dieting for 3 months. March comes, there's a lockdown. So you're then left in a situation where you're meant to be competing in the June, but you don't really know if it's going to go ahead.
Right.
So you don't know whether you should continue dieting and continue training, or do you just pull the plug?
That must be a really awkward situation to be in, like, in general. Obviously, COVID in general was a really difficult time for everybody, but going through something like that, I mean, the only thing I can compare it to is I got my degree in 2020. I had to finish my degree during that time, so obviously that was uncertainty as well. So, but anyway, go on.
Because you're almost kind of in limbo.
Yeah,
You
you're
don't
not sure
really
what's going to
know.
happen.
Yeah, you're kind of lost in the woods. It's a bit like, you know, you go halfway into your journey and you think, should I turn around and go back, or should I just keep? I've came this far, should I just keep going? And
You almost feel like future disappointment, even though you don't know you'll be disappointed.
yeah, totally.
Like, you know, you're gutted it's going to end, but you're like, might not actually end. It might still go ahead. So
Absolutely. Anyway, I just kept going. I just thought, I'm not giving up here. I'll just keep going. So I trained in the garden. I had a barbell and some plates, and I just adapted and just trained outside, trained in the garden. I continued to diet, and I just kept going and going and going. And then they called off the shows at like April. So what I did was I just increased my calories and cruised, continued to diet, and they collapsed. What they did was they collapsed the regionals.
right.
And made a British final.
All right. Okay.
So by default, I then went into the British finals. I made a British finals.
There you go.
There you go.
Right? But
Fantastic.
now, would I have got to a British finals? I'm going to say no. Right? I'm going to say I wouldn't have got to a British finals. My physique isn't good enough. I'm not a good enough bodybuilder, right? My posing isn't good enough. I'm just being honest, right? It's not. I just do it for fun because I enjoy it, right?
Well, that's what my mentality is with strongman. It's for fun, whereas a lot of people it's more competitive. But it doesn't mean it's a bad thing. I mean, people are in it for different reasons. So,
Of course.
but you got to the finals.
Well, I mean, like, you can only compete against the competition that's in front of you / the competition you've been put in. So,
it wasn't
you know,
anything you could control.
yeah, it doesn't. You know, you're saying you wouldn't have made it. Maybe you would have, but you did. Circumstances or not, you were still there, and then obviously,
Yeah, well, I got there through perseverance.
yeah,
Anyway, I dieted down to October was the British finals. It ended up going down there through, like, they did things like you weren't allowed to travel and all. It was the travel restrictions, and I had to get down to Birmingham, and then my coach, he was track and traced a couple of days before, and then there was all this thing about should he be travelling down with me and all of this stuff, right? It was a nightmare. But anyway, we ended up going down and making it, and there was only 2 of us made the lightweight category.
Right.
So me and another guy from Aberdeen. So there's 2 of us went on stage. They streamed it live,
all right,
which was good because they couldn't have any fans there, like any supporters there.
yeah,
That's good. That's what we had to do. Virtual adaptation.
It was great. So I came second because there was only 2, and he was better than me, so he was first. So I was second in the UK. So My thing was, did I have the second best physique at lightweight in the UK? No. But nobody else wanted to do that through lockdown. Nobody else had the staying power to train, because everybody else said, well, if I can't be the best, I'm not going to do it, I'm not going to train. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas I just went as far as I possibly could. I pushed myself as far as I possibly could push myself. And I think there's a thing out there to say that you don't always need to be the best. You just need to be the most resilient. You just need to want it more than anybody else. And
Well,
it can happen, you know.
definitely. I actually think that a lot of strongman comps, especially amateur comps, but even pro comps, there's always pullouts every single time. Sometimes it's one or two, sometimes half the competition don't show up. But I used to coach some people for strongman, and some of them have been to comps before, and they said they came 7th out of 9 or 8th out of 10, and they were a bit like, oh, I've only came 8th or something like that. This isn't anyone specifically, because I've also kind of thought that myself as well. But then I've said to them, yeah, you came 8th out of the 10 that showed up, but 17 signed up and 7 didn't show up. And so in my opinion, you've beat those other 7 people. It's not you'd only beat 2. You showing up already puts you above everyone that didn't show up, because a lot of the time it might be they're injured. But it also could just be they're like, I don't think I'm strong enough to win, so I'm not going to do it. Which in my opinion means that, fair enough, it happens to everybody. Mentally, if you're not in it, then you can't do it all the time. But you then have not shown up, and in my opinion, that means that you have not placed in that comp. So therefore, if you're 9th or even 10th, you've beat everyone that was supposed to go that didn't. And so even coming 2nd out of 2, like you were saying, no one else in that was wanting to do it. Half them probably gave up during lockdown and didn't prep. So your physique, you were saying, might not have been the second best. It might have been at the time, because all these guys had stopped training, had stopped dieting, and if they showed up on that day without doing any of that, just if randomly, maybe you would have been second still. So I do feel like if you go there and you show up, you've already won something.
Yeah.
Whether it's personal battle or anything.
You've won the psychological battle.
Yeah.
What you've got to remember is that sport is about it's about mindset, probably more than anything else. And it's not just about technique, it's not just about tactics, it's not just about ability. It's about the mental resilience and the mental strength. And if you have got that mental fortitude, it's amazing what you can, where others don't have it. Mm-hmm. If you can exploit those weaknesses really, really well. I think there's a lot to be said for it, particularly in things like strongman. Where it is such you're pushing the boundaries, of what's safe or what's, you have to take a risk at times. And what separates the best from everybody else is the ones that are willing to take that risk and go the extra mile.
Yeah, perseverance is a great word for it as well. And obviously in strongman, things like pain is a huge thing as well. Yeah. Some of these events hurt you like hell, whether that's muscular pain or your hand getting torn apart with a grip event. My first ever strongman competition was the first TubbyFit one we had at Achieve Strength. And I basically came second last or last in every event, but there was one event I came second in, and that was through perseverance, because I just put up with the pain longer than anyone else could, which was a grip event. It was a Denny hold. And through that pain, I just stood there and pretended nothing was happening till I had to let go, because I just couldn't hold on anymore. Mm-hmm. But some people, they wouldn't put up with that pain. So I came second in that event, even though I had barely any experience in strongman, and I came last every other event, or second last. So
it is funny, because there is actually a few events in strongman that you have to be strong to do it, but more often than not, it's actually your pain tolerance that beats the other person, not your strength. Like the Denny hold, it's, I don't know if you know what the Denny hold is, but anyone, I'm sure most people would know it that might be listening, but it's basically 2 sort of rings, metal rings with hundreds of weight on the bottom
really
of it.
Thin
and they're really
rings.
thin, and they're also not the same size, they're differently shaped. And so when you're holding it, you need to lock it out and hold it at the top for as long as you can, and the ring just is pulling against your hand as much as it can, and it really digs in and hurts. And a lot of people, when they drop it, they can't even open their hand at first. They have to wait a few seconds and then slowly kind of bring it back. And that is like, to lift it, you need to be strong, and to grip it, you need to be strong. But you can be much stronger than somebody, and they can just put up with it more than you and beat you easily.
Totally agree.
Same with even like the front hold event. A lot of the time, people will hold, like a weight in front of them with both arms, and more often than not, it's not really strength, but just somebody's shoulder is getting so sore that they just let go. Whereas someone else can just totally zone out and hold it for 2 minutes, and then once they're done, they're like, oh, an hour or whatever. But during it, they're just ignoring the pain basically. So it is a kind of weird thing. Of a lot of the time in a lot of sports, you can actually kind of beat people that are better than you at that sport by other means, and it might be mental toughness or literally physical pain tolerance.
Yeah.
It is weird how it works.
I've got little experience of strongman, but from the competition that I saw, it really opened my eyes, and I completely agree with that. It's pain tolerance. Comparing that to bodybuilding, it's the same. If you can diet for another 2 or 3 weeks, that can be the difference between your glutes coming in and not being in. It can be the difference between seeing your hamstrings and not seeing your hamstrings. And the difference is detail. So you could go onto stage against somebody who perhaps has a better physique than you, perhaps is bigger than you, but they're perhaps just carrying a little bit too much body fat. You've went the extra mile when you're hungry, when you're tired, when you've got cravings, but you push through and you persevere. The glutes come in, the hamstrings come in, and judges can see that they've went that extra mile. They've got that little bit extra detail that just is lacking in that other competitor who perhaps has a better physique. Now, I'm not saying it all comes down to conditioning and detail. It doesn't. There's a certain amount of balance that has to be there. Obviously, you have to have some muscle. You need to present it in the right way, all of that. But again, it's an example of perseverance can take you up another level,
Yeah, that's a great word for sport in general, especially strength related and bodybuilding, weightlifting sports. Totally agree.
Well, yeah, I mean, we can actually move on from that kind of sports now because we've spoken a lot about it, but it may be good to talk about, obviously you were a football coach at one point. Football was pretty much the one sport that I have never been interested in, not in a sense of not liking it, but in a sense of never been good at it, really.
Both of us,
you'll
know from teaching.
I was going to say, you'll know probably from teaching us.
Neither of us were the best footballer, skill-wise.
I mean, I enjoyed playing it in the park with my pals when I was young
Loved
and things
playing
like
it,
that.
loved playing football.
But I've never been into the competitiveness of football, and to be honest with you, I personally think the environment of football, amateur football, can sometimes be pretty, not bad, but it can be pretty cutthroat with a lot of things and pretty, not unwelcoming, but unfriendly sometimes with, especially when you're a kid and that and you're just doing it for fun. And so I was always kind of intimidated when I was younger with football because I wasn't as good at it. But it is still a great sport, and obviously it's the most popular sport in the world for a reason. So you obviously were
huge in Scotland.
well, in Scotland particularly, yeah. You were obviously a football coach, probably a player as well, but a professional football coach would be what it was, yeah. And even, was it in Mexico you learned how to do it, or was that like a...
Well, no, like, obviously in my early 20s I played football in my teens, and then in early 20s I played football and played junior football, amateur football, what have you. I was never the best. I'm Mr. Average at pretty much everything. But I just try my best. I've always tried my best to the point where I can't really... I think that was the one thing that frustrated me about football, playing football, was that, I tried so hard. I was so professional in everything that I did. I would go to my bed early on a Friday night. I would eat the same thing on a Friday night, eat the same thing on a Saturday in preparation for the game. Just prepare right mentally, physically, even although, it wasn't the highest level. And to see other people out there who were much more talented than me just not even give it a second thought, it disheartened me a wee bit, because I just always feel you should always do the very, very best that you can, and regardless of the level you're competing at or the sport you're competing at, you want to do the very best you can. And so that disheartened me a wee bit, and I decided to stop playing and go into coaching. And I think the reason I decided to go into coaching was because I wanted to get the best out of people. I wanted to push people to be the very best that they could be. So I was fortunate enough to get, when I started getting into it, I coached at Celtic, had 15s, 14s, and then I had 3 or 4 years coaching at Celtic at a really good level. Got coaching badges and whatever else, and decided to go to Mexico to, suppose, I wanted to learn Spanish. I wanted to pursue coaching qualifications in Mexico, so that I could then get coaching work out there. And I used my teaching as a vehicle to get me there, because what I did was I taught there. So that was a means of getting money together to then go and take on qualifications in Mexico. So that was the plan, that was the idea behind it. But for me, the reason I wanted to coach football was to get the best from people. Football's the vehicle, but really coaching is the thing about getting people to recognise and realise their potential. That's it,
Yeah, I mean, it's actually kind of similar when I was a basketball player. I like to pretend I still am a wee bit, because we do scrimmage on occasion, but when I was an actual basketball player, and I was playing in the National League and all that, and I was really loving it. I was the captain of my team. We won a few things. Joseph as well did the same.
Yeah, we were pretty high level basketball players for our age at the time, and we did win medals, trophies with our teams. The same team, obviously, with different age categories at the time.
But I mean, it's not really. I don't want to speak about my basketball career in that sense, but I wanted to say, I wasn't trying to just show off about it.
By the way, I've got a medalist.
when I got injured, I tore my ACL or something like that, 3 or 4 times, and I ruptured it 3 times, the same ACL, within about maybe 5-6 months. It's kind of my fault for always going in too early, but it always kind of happened, and so I basically.
Stay off.
It was that, or just completely stay off.
So
but it was a 10-month
decision
recovery. But that was just before lockdown, actually, because I hadn't even started Strongman until halfway through lockdown, and then obviously sumo wrestling I only started 6 months ago.
Not long ago, yeah.
But I ended up coaching basketball, and I was coaching it in the school actually when I was still a pupil.
That's right.
And I would say I genuinely would say I enjoyed coaching it more than I enjoyed playing it, which I really loved playing it. But when I started coaching it and seeing the people go from completely beginning novices to basketballers and being good at the sport, which obviously it's down to them 100%, but the fact that you were actually even part of that journey for them, that they could even do it, it was really good. I loved it. I loved seeing people who wouldn't really necessarily, especially basketball, because it's not football, and so a lot of people go to basketball who aren't footballers, basically, who have maybe been knocked down a bit from not being good at football, thinking that they're not going to be good at a sport or not athletic, and then they end up loving basketball and they end up becoming really good at it. And so being a coach, it's almost like I felt like I was helping me, because I joined basketball and I was rubbish at football, and I used to kind of think I wasn't really good at sports because I was bad at football. Then I joined basketball and I was coached and I became quite good at basketball, and that's the only reason probably that I've led to where I am now, being a PE teacher and a sumo wrestler and all that. Otherwise, I probably would have focused on the trombone that I was doing at the time as well, and I would have became that instead.
Yeah, I do think football can be, and there's nothing wrong with this either, is it can be quite elitist to a point, and I think there's a place for that too, because people always find that their level, but it can be difficult for some kids, and I'm speaking from I suppose a PE background here, seeing all different types of kids partaking sport, but it can be tough in football, because if you're not naturally gifted at it and you don't have a liking to it, you need to be a certain type of character and a certain type of person that really enjoys and thrives in football, and sometimes it just misses a different category of person. Do you know what I mean? It just doesn't capture them. It doesn't capture their imagination. And what I think basketball does is, certainly, from my experience, it captures a different audience. And particularly that club that was going, allowed people to recognise their potential. Hold on a minute here, I've never been good at football. Does that mean... Because I think sometimes there's a culture in this country of, if you're not good at football, you're not an athlete.
That is the thing.
Do you know what I mean?
Football, yeah.
And I love football. Football's my life, man. I love it. I was brought up in football.
Many people
I
are the
love it.
same in Glasgow in particular.
I also
It's
think there's a
like-
snobbery against football too. Like, I think sometimes people look down their nose at you because you're into football, as if you're just a, you know what I mean?
For want of a better phrase, they kind of see it as a Ned's game.
Aye.
Something that
Yeah, a rough
we
like
gets do.
yeah, they
play
don't see it as like
That's what I'm saying. People are scared of it because they think the individuals doing it are always a bit of a ruffian.
Yeah.
But it's not true.
there's
It's
always a
absolutely not
sport
true.
like rugby, and I feel like, again, there's no offense to rugby players because I really like rugby as well. But there's a lot of kind of rugby parts of Scotland as well that might look down on footballers because they think rugby's like the sport and football's like not a real sport. But then, like you said, a lot of people are like, oh, you're not good at football, your sport's meaningless, basically. It doesn't matter, it's football. So there's kind of two sides of it, and there's a lot of people in the middle, but there is definitely a divide of people who are really into football who think nothing else matters, and people that are so not into it that they think that they don't like it and they dismiss it. Yeah, it is kind of strange.
But I think basketball, again, from what I've seen, it's a sport that allows people to, because it's catch and throw. Right, so everybody can catch and throw the ball, right? So there's a start, right, for any kid. Is like, well, can you catch and throw the ball? Yes, I can. Right, well, you're in. You can play this, right? So it's an avenue for kids to throw themselves into that. And if they might not be good at football because it's a bit of a niche in terms of the skill set that's required, but with basketball they can access that sport. And then all of a sudden, people start to realise their potential. Well, I can be an athlete. I can do something. It doesn't need to be football. Do you know what I mean? Like, you can be not good at football, but there are a whole load of other stuff that you can do. And see, even if you're rubbish at whatever it is you do, like me at bodybuilding, for example, you can still do it and really enjoy it.
Yeah.
And like, sports for everybody, do you know what I mean? You'll find a level and you might not go to the very top, but, or you might in your case, but you just enjoy it.
I think that's a good TubbyFit mentality.
I was just about to say that's pretty much
Because it shows you as well that you don't have to be the norm. You don't have to be a specific person, a lean, muscular, fit guy. Like, when we first started the basketball club, it was pretty much me and my pals in St Ninians, who were at this. It was at the event where it was like, oh, select the sport that you'd like to have an after school club, and then it kind of blossomed from that into what Chris was doing with the kids. And obviously I'm pretty sure it's still going in the school, but I've not been in so long now.
Yeah, it's still going.
So it's still a thing, but
yeah.
that's the thing, like, basketball was very much up and coming back then. It wasn't really anywhere near what it is now, and it's still not huge in this country, but it is getting there. But people were of all shapes and sizes, really unfit, like myself, maybe not the most sporty in general, but they just found that camaraderie in basketball. They found that they actually really enjoyed it. I found that I was kind of skilled at it and ended up getting medals from it and really enjoying it and keeping fit through that, even though I wasn't the best footballer per se. But that's exactly it. Like, the TubbyFit mindset essentially is that you don't have to be this ideal person, like ideal sportsman. You can still be a sportsman. You can still do things and achieve. You don't have to be an idealistic person in the world,
Well, basketball's a brilliant example of that, and like you're saying, TubbyFit's about, doesn't matter what shape you are, background, strength, whatever your body type, doesn't matter, you can do it. Perfect example in basketball. People think, oh, you need to be tall to be a basketball player, you need to be really big or whatever, which in Scotland, obviously it's a bit easier because not everyone's tall, but there are tall Scottish people, obviously. I remember playing against people who were 6'9", and the under 18s, 16, 17-year-olds. But perfect example is, you don't need to be tall to be a good basketball player, because I ended up becoming the captain of my basketball team, and I was 5'8" at the time, maybe. And there was much taller people in the team. We had 6'5"
5'8"
guys
at the time.
Yeah, well, I'm talking about under
Never
16s.
been 5'8" in my life.
Talking about under 16s or whatever, under 18s. And there was guys in my team who were 6'4", 6'5", massive guys. And I'm not saying I was better than them, because I was definitely not the best player in my team at all. But I didn't. Well, I didn't
You
have.
might not have been the most skilled
Yeah.
dribbler or the best shooter, but you were a captain for a reason. Just like people are captains, it's not necessarily the best player in the squad.
Yeah.
It's for a reason you're picked. So,
Well, I mean, I get it's TubbyFit mindset. I guess it's maybe because I was that small, but I didn't feel small, so to speak. I didn't feel like I was not able to be as good as these guys because I was tall or shorter. Even sumo wrestling, the biggest sumo wrestler I've had to fight was 6'6" and 180 kilos, and I'm quite a big guy, obviously, but I'm
Yeah.
still way smaller than
We're
that guy.
talking
Yeah.
Lots of kilos heavier.
And the
than
fact there's a guy in, I'm going to compete in this competition in Estonia, and the world champion sumo wrestler is there. He's from Ukraine. He's 6'5", and 200 odd kilos plus. But I'm not going into it thinking, oh, he's much bigger, he's going to win. I'm going into it thinking he's the world champion, he's going to win. But I'm not thinking because of his size, it's going to make him beat me, you know. And that's kind of, guess, similar with the basketball mentality of what you're saying. Like, it is a sport that a lot of people can come into and being anything and end up leaving with the mindset of thinking, like exactly what you're saying, oh, I can be an athlete because I was pretty good at this, so I can kind of do. This is exactly what happened to me. You know, I went to basketball and then done strongman, now sumo, and it all kind of led from thinking, oh, I was quite good at basketball, so I could probably be quite good at something else, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I like the idea of, like, I've always loved team sports and loved being part of a team and part of a group, and you know, it's something I definitely miss. But one of the reasons I decided to go into like an individual sport, I used to love running as well and cycling and that kind of thing. One of the reasons I love individual sports is because it's just you, and there is nobody can put you off. There is nobody can bring you down. There's nobody that can mess things up for you. It's you against you, and if you're preparing for a race or a competition or a run, whatever it is, whatever result you get is the result you deserve. You're not relying on anybody else. And as much as I love the social thing, I love this idea of, you know, it's just all you need to focus on is you. And I think individual sports are great for that, because most of the time it doesn't rely on raw talent, which sometimes football and basketball do. That is a lot of talent involved in skill acquisition, like running, cycling, strongman, bodybuilding. Okay, bodybuilding genetically it helps, you know, if you look a certain way or built a certain way, but at the end of the day, it's just you and it's sheer effort. You know?
100%. I mean, you could say that all sports in some way genetically can help you. Obviously, bodybuilding, that is quite, it's more an impact than others. But I do think that something like strongman as well, a lot of people complain about their genetics in the sense of, oh, I'm not tall enough to do Atlas stones, or, you know, to an extent that's fair enough, or, you know, genetically I'm not able to recover as well as this guy or whatever. But you can, that might be true, but you can still improve on yourself. You know, your fitness one year to the next year, or your strength. Your genetics don't improve. You know, all of a sudden, it's not your genetics you're changing. You're just making yourself better, and so, you know, you can do that with anything basically.
Yeah,
you know,
if you work hard, you can overcome something like genetics. If you work hard enough for, like, towards a goal, it might be more difficult for you, but going back to perseverance, like, if you really stick in with something, you can achieve something. Even if you are a 5'5" basketball player. Shout out to Muggsy Bogues, by the way. He's a legend.
5'3" basketball player, Muggsy Bogues.
Just shows you, like, you can be at any level. It doesn't matter, because that's the professional NBA. That's the highest level of that particular sport, and he still did he had an amazing career. So it doesn't matter what level you're at, whether you're in, you know, amateur sumo or professional basketball. It doesn't really matter. It's all about the talent, the talent you have and the work you put in. I was going to say, it was interesting going back to the coaching. Like, you're both coaches in your own rights. But it was interesting that you started coaching essentially because you found yourself maybe not the best sportsman at football, for example, but you basically found a way of being involved with football at the highest level as a coach. And so something like Christopher was saying, he got injured, and that obviously led to him to being a coach of basketball. You might not be the best athlete, so that leads into coaching. So yeah, I was just going to say, it can lead to there's different paths towards coaching. That is obviously another route into a sport. If you're maybe not the best performer at basketball or strongman, you can still become a coach. And coaches, I think there's a misconception that a coach is always going to be a great player at a sport, but it doesn't necessarily mean that's true. You can sometimes not be the best player, but it means you're still the best coach. I'm not wording this very well, but you can coach someone professionally even if you're not able to be a professional footballer, for example. You can still be a brilliant manager. You can still be a brilliant strongman coach, or I was going to say you have your own coaching program on various platforms, I think, Instagram as well. But I was obviously Christopher's left, so I didn't really want to get too much into it. But I was going to ask you about the coaching that you do personally as
Must
well.
have get fed up listening to the two
I
of
know he
us.
must have. I think he's just ditched us, to be honest. I was put on the spot a wee bit.
No, I don't. I don't know. There's always that debate. Like, I can't remember who it was said this. I think it was an Italian coach. Who was it now? Anyway, he said I don't need to have. Is it something like? I don't need to have.
We'll just say Giovanni. We'll just name something.
He said they don't need to have been a horse to be a joke. It was something like that. It was something like that. I can't remember. That's terrible. I can't remember that.
Though, like there's different paths.
You don't need to have been a horse to be a jockey, right?
Yes, exactly. So,
I think there's different paths in. Look, I mean, I was talking to Heather, earlier about this today.
Heather's your partner.
That's my partner, aye. So she was asking me about it, and I had said, look, even if Lionel Messi, right, was coaching, he's the best player in the world, there are things on the football pitch that even he can't do. Like, he's never played as a centre back, for example. Never. He's never played as a goalkeeper. And granted, he's not going to be coaching goalkeepers certain things. You would have specialised goalkeeper coaches, but he's going to be giving goalkeepers information as a part of a team. You can't have played every single position.
Very much so.
You still have to coach some players, even who play in a certain position that you never played in.
Yeah.
So there are always going to be times where you're coaching somebody to perform skills that you either haven't been able to do or weren't very good at.
That's a perfect example. Yeah,
no, I'm not saying that you can do it without having any experience of the sport. I'm not suggesting that. I think there's got to be a bit of a hybrid of the two, but it's about recognising what your qualities are and bringing them out in somebody else. And ultimately that's what coaching is. And you don't necessarily need to have been the best player or the best athlete to bring the best out in someone else. And I think what I recognise in myself is, and what I did recognise at that age, was I was never really going to be that good, and my enjoyment really came from seeing the potential that others have, and it still is. I love seeing the potential that people have and helping them to get there. And that gives me, I'm never going to be the one in the limelight, I'm never going to be the one that takes the glory, but that's okay. I'll live with that. That's just what I think
your students essentially will be, though, if you coach them well enough and they end up achieving, that is your achievement inside. Like, you would feel that.
Definitely.
Even through, in the background, as you say.
Well, definitely. I mean, I must have taught hundreds or thousands of kids over the years in school or coach, whatever it might be, right? And there's so many have gone on in life, and I'm, maybe meet them now, and
I mean, we are two prime examples.
Exactly, the best example, who go on to do far better than me. And sometimes that can be a bit disheartening, because you think, you're here and you've always been here for however many years, and all these kids are going up there and they're going and doing things and they're seeing the world and they're travelling and they're, I don't know, just having these careers, and you never really get to see that. But I think that's what it's about. It's about putting people up on that platform and letting them go. And I accept and I understand that that's just my role in life, is to help others get there. I won't, but others will, because they perhaps have other gifts and talents that maybe I haven't been blessed with. But
well, as a PE teacher, that's surely one of the most perfect positions to be in, like with your career. You must see loads of kids progress and do so much. Like, even if that's coming from first and even just passing through high school, that's an achievement in itself. That's a perfect job to have. As you say, you've taught thousands and thousands of kids over the years, and you're also in a very you're a guidance teacher as well now. You're in a key position to help people, and you're a leader as well. You're a leader to these people and these kids and the people that you coach. So leadership as well is a huge aspect in sport. I just wanted to say.
Well, you also mentioned that you were obviously teaching in Mexico when you were there, so even, other countries in the world you've taught people, it's not even just Scotland. And so there'll be, you've met us a few times since, we left school and things, but you were saying you don't really get to see it that often, and especially if you've taught in Mexico, you'll probably never see anyone you taught in Mexico in terms of them, going any place. But there's a lot of ex-pupils of yours actually that do think highly of you. I've spoke to a few before we were coming on this. I just bumped into a few in the gym, and I was like, "Oh, I'm doing a podcast with, Mr. Boland." And
Took a survey and
yeah, we took a survey. We voted for if it was to be you or Mr. Mulgrew. No, I'm just joking.
Definitely be Mr. Boland.
No, but actually, one of the comments was, and you can take this with how you will, but a couple of the comments was they think you're a very fashionable guy. Genuinely,
I've never heard that before in my
That
life.
was-
Certainly not demonstrating that.
no, I mean,
Straight for the
if you were in the beard competition, because you do have beard, then the outfit, they might have said it worked well, but they
Is there a
didn't follow
rainbow
it.
beard category? No.
There is a fake beard category.
Oh, right, okay.
Where you can and it is creative, yeah. But yeah, that's just something, I was just talking about the pupils in general, that, I think even though you sometimes might not get to see them, and this is somebody who's literally just started teaching, I'm talking about, obviously I did student placements and things, and a lot of them though will think about you a lot, and because I remember when I left school, I still think about a lot of my teachers when I was in school and think highly of them and stuff like that. And so
that is someone you look up to.
yeah, it's somebody that you'll always think about when you're at the
Some
top.
teachers more than others, definitely.
Yeah.
Not saying anything about any other teachers, but
No.
some just have a connection with you, and you just remember it for the rest of your life, basically. So, and it's good to be that individual. If you make an impact on even one kid, I'm sure
Yeah.
you'll know and you'll feel that.
Yeah, it is, but a lot. Teaching's hard, man. Like, you'll learn that, Chris. Like, and you all know that already. But like, the fruit, you never ever see the fruits of your labour. It's so hard. I'm fortunate in my career that I've seen that a couple of times. You two, in all seriousness, been an example of that. When I see what you guys have achieved with TubbyFit, the competition that you put on was just fantastic. It was amazing competition, honestly. Like, it was so good.
And
Such a
you were
community
kind enough
spirit
to help
around
out.
that. Yeah, it was amazing. It's just really, really good. And to see you guys doing so well, it does fill me with pride. I know, whatever, but it does. You very rarely get to see it. There was one time I had taught a guy. It was when I was in my probationary year. It wasn't in St Ninians. It was the school I was in before that. And he gave me a torrid time. He was a third year in my probation year. Oh, he gave me a right sore time. Every day, man, he was at me. He was causing mischief, and gave me a sore time. Anyway, 10 years later, I meet him on a flight to New York, and I'm sitting beside him.
Wow.
Aye, and he actually says to me on the flight, this is a coincidence, he says to me on the flight, he said, "You're Mr. Boland, aren't you?" I said, "Oh God, right, I hate when people say that, because I feel dead old now." I said, "Oh, right. And then I'm always paranoid that I don't remember this person. And I knew who it was. I said, "Ah, you're such and such." And he said, "Aye, that's right." And he said, "Listen, I'm really sorry. I was a date to you in school, and I'm really sorry about that. I was immature." And he said, "I really apologise." I said, "Listen, don't worry about it." I says, "Where are you off to?" And it turned out he was doing a football scholarship in somewhere in the Midwest. So he was getting a connecting flight from New York to somewhere, and he was only maybe, I'd said fast forward 10 years, it wasn't even that, because he was 18, 17 maybe when he left. So I managed to take him to get his connecting flight, and I took him through customs and all the rest of it, and helped him on his way, and sort of saw him off. And I think he really appreciated that, because he didn't have anybody. He'd left his family to go and, 18, to go and live in America.
I mean, even airports are frightening for a lot of people,
Yeah.
I can't even get myself through a train station, never mind a bloody airport. Honestly, I'm not even kidding. So, yeah, it's a big thing to do at that age, man. And I'm 25 now, and I still struggle. It's really good of you to do that.
I mean,
It's the coincidence as well.
I was going to say, that's amazing to even bump into somebody.
Yeah.
I remember I bumped into one of my old judo coaches at an airport once, and he was going to Amsterdam, and I was going to... It's when we were going to Iceland, actually.
Lovely country.
It was a really nice country, yeah. But yeah, it was just so weird to bump into him, because I hadn't seen him for about 7-8 years. Because he taught me when I was like 9, you know, I was like really young, and I was about, well, I would have been about 20 or 21 when we went, so it would have been actually about 13 years. And then he somehow still recognised me though, and I was,
think about what he looked like in school
yeah.
and what he's like
I know, especially like when I bump into a lot of ex-teachers of mine, especially when I did a student placement in Eastern Bartonshire, and we had that thing where we were all the teachers of all the schools together, and all the teachers that knew me all recognised me, and I was really surprised, to be honest with you, because I'm about 60 kilos heavier and I've got a massive beard and long hair and all that, and I was just like, wow, okay, and I lost the monobrow, so there was a lot of things about me I'm so surprised they even recognised me. Yeah, I know, but the monobrow just fell off. I've not done anything.
that fell off and this just grew. Like,
Yeah.
But teachers do care, man. This is important for sport. I think, you know, they do care, and it shows you that, you know, when they do remember you, the teachers care, you know, and it can be hard being a teacher sometimes, because day to day you sometimes don't feel like you're making a difference, and you have to really battle every day to try to be the best you can and the best role model, and it's hard because you've got a life, and bad things happen to you sometimes, and sometimes you're just not in a great mood or whatever.
but you still have to go to
You
school. You
still have to go and do it, and oftentimes, and that was what I was alluding to, is that you don't get to see like all that work you put in day to day with a kid. It's the tip of the iceberg. Like, they go on to do things, and they probably, you forget that as a teacher, they probably look back and think, I'm really grateful. I remember that time Mr. Boland said this, or I remember that time, you know, they said that, and you think it just goes in one ear and out the other every day with kids, but there will be kids there who do remember, and they do take inspiration from what you're saying. You need to try and remember that every day, is that you are having an impact. You might not see it there and then, you know.
No, yeah, I totally agree, and I can say myself that you've certainly had an impact on my overall life in general, and so have many other teachers, lecturers, and just people I've met in life. And maybe I've met them for 5 minutes, or maybe I've known them for years, but it does make an impact. And fair enough, it might go in and out of some students' ears, you know, maybe hundreds and thousands of them, but if, as I said earlier, if you make that impact on one kid, it's surely worth it. And that's probably, I'm assuming, that's probably why you're in a job like a teaching role. PE in particular is quite a personal class in school. It's one of the most unique classes in school. And you really do make sort of bonds, and you can be a bit more casual. I'm not a teacher. You guys will be more experienced at that, but you can be a bit more casual. There's not really the arithmetic or whatever from maths and stuff. It's just kind of a book and a teacher.
Well,
whereas in PE, you can have a personal sort of connection with people more.
to be fair, you were
Not always. Like, obviously, at other classes that happens as well. But
you've never been a teacher, but you did tutor physics in Springburn Academy for a bit, so you have got a little tiny taste of what it's like. It's not quite the same because it's after school.
well, yeah, no,
You know,
I mean, I do have the. I don't like to get into it too much. It's not all about me, but you know, I have been a physics and maths tutor, and I've tutored several people before in various things, and I've had that role as, you know, essentially a teacher, not as a job, but I've been that person for that kid, and helped them through the process, and seeing them get better gradually over time because of what I've been doing, what I've been helping them. And these kids otherwise couldn't afford, you know, professional tutor, and so being able to be that person for them, like you know, underprivileged families and things like that, that in particular was brilliant. It gave me a really good sense of joy just doing that, because I was just basically, I was doing it during university, and it was just nice to be able to do that for some kids who, you know, I was in a similar position in school where I was struggling with physics as well. And if it wasn't for my tutor, Mrs. Jaffrey as well, in St Ninians, was really helpful towards me and getting my physics, higher physics as well. So I'm really grateful to people who helped me, and therefore it was just a great feeling to be able to do that and give back as well. So I'm not a PE teacher like you guys, but I have obviously been in a position where I have to help people, essentially. Like, I think everyone, not everyone, but some people will be able to relate to that, whether it's teaching maths, PE, or what, or whether they're coaching someone or just helping someone, maybe a therapist or something. And anything like that's like a position where you're helping someone. And I think you kept going back to that, saying being able to help people and achieve their full potential, essentially, is just something that's surely, it gives you a good feeling in yourself, you know.
Well, we're living in a world now where everything is monetised,
Oh,
There's
yeah.
money is the incentive for everything. It's capitalism on steroids now, and I'm not anti-capitalist. No, it's not a political podcast. I'm not anti-capitalist, right? It makes all our lives so much better, of course. Nor am I a communist, but I just think that in today's society, we're under so much pressure to make ends meet, make money. Everything seems to be about money now, and it's so refreshing when you just can make a difference to someone without it having to be a transaction. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's just about, there's not enough of it, I don't think. Maybe there's more of it than we think, but it should just be about, helping people, sharing your own gifts, talents, ideas. It doesn't need to be, a 12-week programme.
Yeah.
It can just be some words, some inspiration, a helping hand. It
Helping
can be
somebody
that.
through an airport, literally anything.
Just stuff like that, the world's a good place, man. There's a lot of good people out there, and, can all help each other
Through
out.
sport as well.
That's it.
You meet loads of people through sport. I mean,
They all help each other.
when we went to Korea to do the Korean Shirim Championships, which is Korean wrestling, is Shirim, and we were there to represent GB, and we went there for like a week odds, had an amazing time. All the Korean people were amazing to us, and
an amazing place.
Well,
it was a surreal experience.
it was a very surreal experience. We had little badges that said like British Shirim athlete, and people from the street were coming up to us wanting photos because they were thinking we were like big professional athletes and things like that.
Well,
and
we should kind of are.
Well, yeah. Well, yeah, over there, that's like their huge thing. Like, obviously, over here, no one's heard of Shirim, but we have heard of something like judo, for example. If you said you were an Olympic judo athlete, you would maybe get more recognition. But over in Korea, that's a huge deal for them. Like, if you said you played for Celtic or Rangers, over here, you'd have like 1 million people running after you.
Good job, you mentioned both.
But
But I was like, like you were saying earlier, it's almost like in Scotland, there's a little bit of, if you're not a footballer, you're not an athlete, or if you don't look like a footballer, then you're not an athlete. And we were over there, overweight guys, technically obese, and guys we had our kilts on as well, so that obviously factored into it. But
we could not
people running over, kids, adults being like, oh my god, wow, you're an athlete, I want to take a photo. And I'm like, there's no way I'd be walking down the street in Scotland and somebody's looking at me going, oh wow, that's an athlete, I need to get a picture with this guy. Like, it's never going to happen ever. And it was just so strange. But if I never got into sports and that, I would never have had that experience. And we still keep in touch with we had a translator who,
fellow athletes from
yeah,
LA and
Wonjin was the translator. We can shout her out. We still talk to her all the time.
legend.
And she took us around Korea, everywhere, basically by our side, and guided us through the whole country. For the whole like 8-9 days we were there. But it's not just we met Italians, people from Vietnam, China, and all that, and some of them we still speak to. People who we were competing against, and it's just amazing, like, to meet people like that from everywhere. And I feel like sport's very unique in the sense of there's not really much other things you can do that, being an amateur or a semi-pro, whatever you want to say, and do that. Like, if you're a professional musician, I'm sure you can go around everyone and meet people. If you're a professional actor, whatever. But if you're an amateur musician, most of the time I doubt you're going around the world meeting hundreds of people from everywhere and being treated like that as well, being treated like you're their best pal,
VIPs. And at the end of the day, we were having full-blown conversations with Italians who couldn't speak English, and we obviously can't speak Italian, but we were still having a literal conversation with this guy and laughing with each other because basically through sport we could relate, and that's something as well. Through sport, we're still having a laugh taking pictures with these people who speak Vietnamese. We didn't speak Vietnamese. They don't speak English, but we could still have that relationship.
And sport's that common denominator that brings you together, that type of thing.
People all over the world.
Literally, there was people from everywhere. I remember there was Team Mongolia were there, really scary guys, and literally all of them were like 6'8", huge muscle, like just looking down at you.
Yeah, well, he ended up winning.
The Mongolians ended up winning the whole thing.
Won the foreigner competition, so it was like just the people from elsewhere in the world.
So not the non-Koreans, but he was great. And at first we were kind of looking at them, and they seemed almost like they didn't like you. Like, they were very like looking at you, and they kind of kept to themselves at first. And then about halfway through the trip, I remember me and Joseph were walking up, and we were wearing our kilts some hill, and one of the,
very famous
it was a really famous hill, but I can't remember the name. But it was really famous. It was like a tomb or something. But
Yeah, it was a tomb actually. It was in the southern
yeah,
Korea.
and
Tongyong.
Tong that was it. And this, the biggest of them all, I think his name was Boogie to us. It's obviously not his real name, but that's just what people call him. And he was 6'8", and he came over and he grabbed us both like that, like by the shoulders, and just started shaking us and started shouting Mongolian at us, and we had laughing, and we had no idea what he was saying. But we kind of he could have been making complete fun of us, but we kind of figured out he was talking about the kilts in some way, and it seemed positive.
Was with his translator as well.
Yeah.
What was his name again?
Chow was his translator.
Aye, Cho. So because of that, he could speak English and Mongolian, and through him, we kind of had a slight relationship with the team.
And we literally couldn't speak Mongolian. He couldn't speak English.
We had a few pints with Joe.
We did have a few pints with Joe, and
Not before the competition.
not before. Well,
This was after we were.
yeah.
Right.
But no, he was ended up somehow befriending this Mongolian to an extent who we couldn't communicate with, because after that we'd spoke a few times after, and there
Shared
was
a drink with him as well.
yeah, exactly.
Some Mongolian rum or whatever that was. Strong.
In fact, the coach for Mongolia, ironically, the only one that was like 5'3". Literally, all of them were like 6'5" above. The coach was 5'2" or 3". He was really short, and he was from Mongolia, and he was this really old guy. Couldn't speak English. He saw Joseph was hurt one day. Came over with this. He got hurt by a Spaniard in the competition. And
this guy was like double my size.
Again, massive guy, but
I just want to say, I was one of the lightest in that whole trip. We were told they wanted heavyweights, and I was 106 kilos. He was probably the second lightest guy there.
Like, I'm 135 and I was the second lightest.
People, 130 plus kilos, and so I just want to say the fact that I even went and fought against these guys. It was an honour to fight against them, to be honest with you. So. And I did get absolutely destroyed by Fabian.
If someone had told me when you were in second year or first year in my class, you would have been away in Korea doing sumo wrestling.
Oh, right. Oh, I thought you meant when I was in second. I was like, that's a
no,
long time.
Somebody had said when you were in somebody had said when you were in second year in my class, you would have been away doing the sumo wrestling.
It is funny, man, because representing GB in Scotland in competitions with your brother, because we're obviously brothers, and doing that together, and it's just I would never have thought it ever, even for myself,
I think I don't want to obviously make a comparison, but the only two other kind of brothers,
don't say Stoltmans.
No, I'm just going to say the only two brothers in that kind of strength related sports is the Stoltman brothers, and that's a very rare thing, is to be brothers and be Europe's strongest man and the world's strongest man. That's incredible to have that achievement as brothers. Yeah. But just getting to obviously compete together as brothers is a unique thing. It doesn't happen too often.
Yeah. No, you're right. I mean, obviously the Stoltmans are way higher up in the sport than us. But you're right in the same that it is the exact same in terms of there's not a lot of people out there that have their brother in the same sport competing at the same level, which is quite a high level. And the story about that Mongolian coach was he saw Joseph being hurt and he came over with this Mongolian yak milk camel marrow thing, and he put it, like he said, it's he wasn't speaking English, but he was saying, hurt, put it on it basically, and so he puts it on it.
He didn't put it on.
No, he didn't put it on him, but he gave him it.
He gave me it that night to put it on. And it genuinely did help me. It genuinely did make me feel better.
It was like a miracle. Literally, he put it on, and the next day he was fine when he was not even walking really.
Yeah.
And I was like,
I was really badly injured, by the way. Like I couldn't move, I couldn't breathe.
I don't know what it was, but I don't want to know necessarily. But it was just like it fixed him, and he didn't have a clue who we were. He didn't speak English, but because we were in the same competition as his guys he was coaching, he was like, I'm going to go help this guy. And it was just an amazing thing to see, really,
It comes back to that thing you were saying, obviously, about the strongman competitions, people wanting others to do well. And I think it's a great thing about sport. But there's also a wee lesson in that I would say about, if you were in business, for example, you would say that one particular aspect of the market is saturated if a lot of people are into something. Mm-hmm. So finding some kind of niche thing is what I suppose gives you some success.
Yeah.
So really, in much the same way, in sport, you've kind of done that. You've found a bit of a niche there with a sport that's untapped in many respects in certain parts of
Yeah.
the world.
In the UK, it's definitely untapped.
Yeah.
Compared to Asia.
But that gives you opportunity.
It does.
Oh yeah.
It does. In the UK, sumo wrestling in particular is still very much up and coming, and we're still building it. The British Sumo Union is quite a new organisation. There were some before that, but this is a proper multi. I was gonna say multi-million. I was gonna say it's like a all over all over Europe and stuff.
Yeah.
Compete around the world in Europe,
Yeah.
and that's never really been a thing
And
before.
we will obviously say Clan Sumo Scotland is
that's
the Scottish one that we are in. British Sumo Union is like, a lot of the time Clan Sumo Scotland is who you'll represent if you're from Scotland, not necessarily the British Sumo Union, but some places you'll be Britain. But it is like that kind of. I think I said it earlier. In Europe it's really big. It is kind of just the UK. It's still really niche, but like I said, the world champion of like the international scene is Ukrainian for sumo. And everybody in the world, you would say, who's the world champion for sumo? They would go, oh, it's a Japanese person, obviously. And don't get me wrong, there is like a difference between the Japanese pro league and the international thing, but Japanese people still compete in the international scene. It's not like they don't do it. So it is definitely a bigger sport than people think it is in Europe, but it is still very niche in the UK. It's getting a lot better. There's a lot more women getting involved, which is good as well. But there is definitely a niche to it still. I don't know. I was going to say, I was going to mention your inside out performance coaching. Obviously, you're like you're coaching. The inside out part of it. What is that kind of about? What does it really mean? I'm not saying that as in like what's that about. I'm just saying like
No.
what is that like? What's the obviously we talked about the TubbyFit story. What's kind of the reason for that name?
Well, the reason for the name, I guess, much of what we've spoken about tonight is about, I suppose it's about coaching from the inside so that the outside is a reflection, outside being either physique or your performance or any of those kind of things.
Something that someone else can see, like something that
Yeah.
you're outwardly showing or achieving.
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily have to be physique, but I mean, I do tend to like, I suppose my thing is about, it's about developing a mindset. It's about developing a mindset and developing your inner self in order to bring out your best. That's what it's about. And yeah, I suppose physique is a medium to that, because for so many people, I think health's a big thing. And I suppose I could talk about like fixing the inside. That could be emotional, it could be mindset, but it can also be about health as well. Not that I'm a health expert, but it's about kind of looking at health as being, looking at your physique as being a byproduct to health.
Oh,
it shouldn't be something that you just strive for necessarily. So yeah, okay. I like to help people, lose weight, develop a physique, become better athletes. I like to help people do that. But it's not at the expense of health, and it's not at the expense of your mental health. It's about actually enhancing those things, those inner qualities, in order that you bring out your best. So, as I said, if you've got a really good physique, it should be about, that should be a reflection of your the health that you have inside. Because I think that there's definitely diminishing return when it comes to physique. You could see somebody with a really good physique, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're healthy.
I do totally agree. Like, I think a lot of coaches as well, it depends on the sport, but a lot of the time you can be coached by someone who is, they look out for what you're going to achieve. They want you to achieve a lot. They want you to win events, whatever. But it's at the expense of that person's mental health.
Yeah.
They might be really struggling to keep up with the demands of that coach or what they're asking for, or they might not quite get to the same level that they're expecting them to be at, or you might, I suppose it's a lot of things are like weight classes as well. You might be really striving to get to a weight, but that might be really hurting your health inside. You might not necessarily be a very healthy person on the inside, even though you look really healthy. You might not be very fit, or you might be struggling. So I agree with that. I think that you need to make sure you're healthy up here first, and that you're not just blindly trying to achieve things that you're not cut out to achieve in that moment. You could be going through a lot in your life. I think you mentioned earlier as well, even it can affect your teaching, but you still kind of have to go in and do it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm not a coach, so I can't comment on anything, but there's certain ways of coaching, and obviously your way is making sure what it starts from the inside.
Yeah.
I think that's quite interesting.
Most of the people I work with are people who want to lose weight and get a better physique, right?
Right.
That's kind of it. So people would come to me and say, look, I need to lose 2 stone. You know, I've signed up for a marathon, or I want to do this, or I want to do that, or I just want to look better for a wedding, or whatever it might be.
Right.
So I guess it's just about saying, well, I can help you lose weight, but in order to get us there, I'm going to help you become healthier, you know, by eating foods that are nutritionally dense, having a focus on feeling better inside, because you've got more energy, and because your mental health's better, you've maybe been able to get rid of that brain fog, and that's the vehicle that gets you there. I think that's all I'm trying to say. Does that kind of...
Well, that makes
answer
a
the
lot of
question?
sense, yeah. I mean, I actually have something kind of similar with I used to coach somebody in Strongman, and obviously the goal was we're going to do competitions, we're going to get stronger. And then we were doing the program and the training, all that was great. And then, you know, we were making good progress, but I was starting to kind of ask more questions about, like, what is it, you know, your relationship with food like, and how you sleep and things like that. And then what we ended up focusing on was completely changing this person's relationship with food for a bit, because you know, they were feeling a bit not energized, and I was saying, well, recently the training has been a lot higher intensity wise, and this is very beginning early on in, you know, this person's career for strongman and coaching. And I was like, what were you eating? And he was eating the exact same thing every single day, which was fine, but you know, it was like not that much calories compared to what he ended up burning, I would say, because he went from doing a bit of strongman to hard prep of strongman, and it wasn't very, you know, the variety wasn't there, because it was a variety on the day, but it was the same thing every single day. And you know, they ended up completely changing, you know, their mindset to food, and they now eat all sorts, and their health has not been sacrificed. They didn't put on any weight, but they just changed the type of food they were eating, and they changed it every day. You know, now they eat egg, they weren't even eating eggs or anything, you know, and all of that happened. But yeah, he ended up getting a much better relationship with food because of that, and you know, that improved him forever with his relationship with food, not just strongman, but just, you know, for him everything. Right, yeah. So that was talking about food there, but I think we've gone on for long enough now. Obviously, it's conscious of time and things. So thanks very much for coming on. Obviously,
Thanks for having me.
the
Really
first
enjoyed it.
episode of Tubby Talks, and I think it was quite a good one. So
Also, happy Valentine's, everyone.
happy Valentine's, as we do record this on Valentine's Day.
If you're spending your Valentine's Day next year, then good luck to you.
Yeah, so that's another reason why we need to probably wrap it up so that we can not get into too much trouble. But yeah, thanks a lot for coming on. Like I said, it was quite fun. I enjoyed talking about all the things, and it's good, obviously, just to catch up as well, because you know, it was good. Do you want to say it? You done?
No, I just want to say it was great. It was a great first episode. I hope that you've enjoyed being here, David, and I hope you've enjoyed it, Christopher. I've really enjoyed being here.
Joseph.
Yeah, my name is Joseph, and I'm a member of TubbyFit. It's great. I thought it's been really fun. I hope you guys have enjoyed listening to it. We're not sure how long it's going to be by the time we edit it and things, but hopefully it'll be a good enough time that you will enjoy it and not get bored. And I'm glad that David was able to come along and give us a great first episode.